All right, well, we're going to get started. We've been studying, I can't remember when we started our Gospels. When you guys were here before the summer, had we started the Gospels? Anybody know? Okay. Well, after we finished 1 Corinthians, we started the Gospels. Not any particular Gospel. We've pretty much just given the call to everyone who speaks, just if they want, pick a passage from Gospel material. So we'll be doing this, I'm thinking we're going to do this till the end of this year, and then we may move on to the next thing, which I'm thinking will be Hebrews, the letter to the Hebrews, but we'll see. So we're going to continue our gospel study this morning. I don't know why, but almost all of my messages have been from Matthew's gospel. I don't know why. I didn't mean it to be that way. For some reason, as I've compared the texts, I end up coming back to Matthew, which is, to be honest with you, a little strange because historically Luke has always been my favorite gospel. So why I'm stuck in Matthew, I do not know. But I'm going to share from Matthew chapter 10. I'm going to read the passage, first 8 verses. I'm going to skip the naming of the 12. Then we'll pray. Then we'll get into the text, okay? Matthew 10, verse 1. Jesus called his 12 disciples to him and gave them authority to cast out demons and to heal every disease and sickness. Skipping to verse 5. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Do not go among the Gentiles, and do not enter any town of the Samaritans. Go rather to the lost sheep of Israel. As you go, proclaim this message. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who have leprosy, drive out demons. Freely you have received, therefore freely give. Let's pray. Lord, help us to hear your word this morning. Open our hearts. Help us understand what you're saying to us individually. Help us to listen to the others in the body of believers to hear what you're saying through them as well. In Jesus' name. Amen. So here we have Jesus sending out the 12, and he gives them very specific instructions. Don't go to the Gentiles. Don't go to the Samaritans. That's interesting. I could spend a good amount of time on that, but I can't because I feel like the thrust of the message is something else. But he also gave very clear instructions. Heal the sick. Raise the dead. Cast out demons. Now, I know that some of us have had some experience in our Christian lives seeing the miraculous. I know some of you have experienced some really miraculous stuff. Over my 40 years, I've seen and I've been used to do some real miraculous things that if I sit and think about, as you get older and the years go by, it's easy to sit and go, let me rethink that. Did that really happen? The older I get, the more I do that. The more I ponder incidents in my past because they seem now so far removed. But healing the sick, casting out demons, and raising the dead doesn't happen every day in my life. It doesn't happen every week. It doesn't happen every month. It doesn't happen every year. So I've seen miraculous stuff, but it doesn't happen. It's not something I just walk around. Some people give you the impression that just follow me and you'll see miracles. That would not be me. I have received some fairly dramatic healings in my life a few times. I've had some dramatic healings through my prayers and laying on of hands towards other people. In fact, more dramatic has been that than what I've experienced in my own life. I've prayed many, many times over my 40 years for people to be healed when it did not appear that God did anything. So even though I've seen the miraculous, I believe in the miraculous, I believe Jesus is telling us to do the miraculous, we would be remiss to not admit that many, many times we ask God to work and it doesn't appear that He does something, right? I mean, I've faced off with demonic spirits. That's something we don't talk much about. In fact, scholars in my field, many of them, think that those examples that are talked about in the gospel material and in the New Testament can be explained through great emotional and psychological distress. Those scholars usually don't address what it meant that they were healed. But, like some of you, I've been overseas and I've seen things. I've experienced things firsthand that leave me no doubt. So when I, am in the academic arena, I have colleagues ask me if anything like this comes up. How can you, because it does, when you're studying New Testament at all. So you really believe in demonic? Well, yeah, I do. How can you believe that, with all the study you've done? Maybe you haven't seen some things that I've seen in my life that cannot be explained through the rational mind. And I know some of you have experienced similar things. We have 4 different texts in gospel material that we call the Great Commission. One's at the end of Matthew's gospel, one's at the end of Mark's gospel, one's at the end of Luke's gospel, and one is at the beginning of the book of Acts, what we call the Great Commission. This text in Matthew 10 is very interesting because it's very similar to the Great Commission at the end of Mark's Gospel, chapter 16, which is what we know as a questionable text in the New Testament. Some of the earliest manuscripts don't have chapter 16. I find it interesting that Matthew 10 is very similar to Mark 16. But that would lead me to give credibility to Mark 16, quite frankly. But what's interesting is Matthew's Great Commission is not like Mark's. But in chapter 10 of Matthew, it is like Mark's. Isn't that interesting? Does anybody find that interesting like me? I find that interesting. I could go on about that, but I'm not going to. You guys don't know how much I would really like to discuss that I have to pass over. Here's the question for the day, I believe, for us. When Jesus gives this commission in Matthew 10 and the Great Commission, what we call the Great Commission, is He only giving it to the 12 in Matthew 10, or is it applying to us? Does the Great Commission apply to us? Does Mark 16, which talks about healing the sick, picking up snakes, anybody who knows me knows I do not touch snakes. My wife loves snakes. When I went out in the garage in Texas and there's this big snake, I yelled for my wife. And my wife came and snatched it up. She loves snakes. She loves any animal like that. And the thing bit her and she's dripping blood, and she turned around with a look on her face of heaven. And her arms dripping blood, and I'm like, what the heck? Oh, he bit me. He didn't like me grabbing him. Do you want to hold him? No! No, I don't want to touch. I don't know. I don't like snakes, I'm sorry, I don't, but my wife loves it. If something bites me, I don't care if it's my cat. I do not like getting bit by an animal. I've seen my wife get bit by more wild animals, and it doesn't faze her. Anyway. She lives Mark 16 better than me by snake, picking up snakes. I think the Great Commission, and I believe Matthew 10, is for all of us. I'm going to refer at the end of my message to Matthew's Great Commission, chapter 28, verses 19 and 20. Matthew's Great Commission makes it exceedingly clear that all of these commissions are for all of us. Now, what does that mean? I mean, Jesus is real clear here what he tells us to do. I think the commission is to all of us, but I think how it works itself out in our individual lives is going to be different. You know, every football team getting ready for their season right now has a great commission, right? They have one goal. What is it? To win what? To win every single game. I never played on a football team or any athletic team where the preparation for the season was, well, let's try to win a couple games. Let's see if we can win a game. I mean, every team I was on, the goal was to win the championship. Now, as some of you already know, I played quarterback. So what I did towards the goal of winning every game was radically different from my left offensive tackle. The way he practiced and what he did and what he needed to do to help us win was radically different from what I did. And what I did was different from what my wide receivers did or my tailback did. But it was all a common goal. You know, the quarterback gets a lot of the attention because he has to touch the ball almost every play. But you ask any quarterback what he thinks about his offensive line, and he's going to tell you, oh, I love those guys. I need those guys. You know, if my left tackle didn't make a block and I was passing to the right, I will get face planted by the guy hitting me without me having, and that happened, you know, a couple times. And I'd get in the huddle and my lineman would go, I'm sorry, Al. And I would usually tell him, just yell, look out. If you missed your block, just say, look out. You know, at least I'll know it's coming. But Paul tells us that we all have different gifts. We're one body, moving the same direction, but every one of us lives this commission out a little bit different. Having said that, notice this. Jesus is not asking us to do these things. He's not giving us a suggestion. He's not saying, hey, you know what? It'd be pretty cool if you guys every now and then would think about, you know, laying hands on someone and seeing if I would heal them. You know what? It'd be nice. You know what? When you get time, tell people about, you know, the kingdom. Tell people the kingdom of God is at hand. Just when you get time, you know. After you watch your football games or play golf, or had to throw golf in there because that's what I like. He tells us to do this. The Great Commission is a commandment. It's not an option. So it behooves us to figure out, what's my role? You know, am I the left tackle? Am I the quarterback? Or am I the place kicker? You know, how many football games come down to the little dude who hardly wears any pads, and he never played football, he played soccer in high school, and you know, no one hits him at practice. I mean, I can tell you on football, you did not hit the kicker. I mean, we treated him like, I mean, you weren't supposed to hit the quarterback, but they did. Sometimes they'd be mad and they'd take my head off, you know, and I'd be like, why'd you hit me? But anyway, and the kicker comes in and wins or loses a game. Sometimes wins or loses a championship, like, you know, what happened to Alabama a couple of years ago against Auburn. Last minute field goal attempt that went bad. So the place kicker seems, I mean, he's not, I mean, no, let's be honest with you. I mean, come on. Every football player will tell you, they're not really football players. You know, they wear a helmet and they kick a field goal, but they're not football players. And yet they're important. Well, you got to figure out what your place is in fulfilling the Great Commission, because it's not optional. This is what we're supposed to be doing. Okay. How many of you have ever had a prayer answered? Raise your hand. You've ever had a prayer answered? Come on, raise them up. Let me see them. Okay? Put them in. How many of you have ever prayed and it did not seem to be answered? How many of you, like me, would be willing to be honest enough to say that it appears, from my perspective, that more of my prayers go unanswered than answered? All right. It's critical that we just face the reality that God does not appear to answer every prayer. Now, you could argue, and I would argue, that a lot of times when he doesn't appear to answer, he did answer. And his answer was no. We don't like no, do we? I mean, when my kids were little, they learned real quickly that when we go to Walmart or whatever, do not ask me for every toy and every piece of candy that gets your attention. Because anybody knows that's a constant. And it leads to conflict in Walmart. My kids heard me say no far more than they got their answers. But I did answer their request. I answered their prayer. It was no. You're not getting that. Did I hate them? Did I do it because I wanted to be mean? Did I do it because I didn't really love them? No. And we got to get this in our hearts and minds. That God is in charge, and he knows what he's doing, and we have to live with that. But does that mean when I ask for someone to be healed, and God doesn't appear to heal them, does that mean I quit asking? No. And that's what we tend to do, you guys. We tend to, or when I share something of the kingdom with someone I'm trying to influence, and it doesn't appear that they're listening, does that mean I need to quit? No. I remember after I became a believer, I heard from some fellow athletes that the Fellowship of Christian Athletes meeting, my name came up several times about who we need to pray for, that they'll come to know Jesus. And one meeting in particular, someone brought up my name and the whole place scoffed and said, Al Baker would never become a Christian. Well, guess what, you guys? None of those Christians ever shared with me. None of them. Now, I don't think I was I was a friendly person. I didn't sit around mocking Christians. I really didn't. I was not living a good life, but I wasn't mean to any Christian. But because they weren't sure that God would answer that prayer, none of them ever approached me with the gospel. When I finally did come to Christ, I went and visited a fellow basketball teammate who was at the University of Alabama in a fraternity and looked him up. And so I was at his fraternity house, and his name was Brian. And, you know, we had a great reunion of sorts. And I told him, I said, Brian, I've become a Christian. And he was so happy. I mean, he was probably the main Christian that I knew on the basketball team. Maybe the only Christian on the team. He was so happy. And I rejoiced with him for a couple minutes, and then as is the way I am, his back was against the wall. I had, positioned myself where he couldn't get away. And I said, Brian, why didn't you ever share Christ with me? And his face fell. And he got a really sad look on his face. He goes, I don't know. I was afraid. I was afraid you wouldn't want to be my friend anymore. And I said, listen, man, don't do to these guys in this fraternity house what you did to me. Share your faith. Don't be afraid. I needed him. I asked him questions about faith, and he didn't share with me. When I was in my time of really seeking to know what's going on in life. Now, they were stupid questions. Hey, Brian, do you think there's life on other planets? I mean, I know that's not, I don't know the gospel. Can you please tell me the Roman road of salvation? But I don't know the right questions to ask. I mean, is there life on other planets? I mean, do you believe we came from apes? I don't know. But he didn't take the opportunity. We must do that, you guys. It's part of the commission that Jesus gives us. How you do it is different from how I will do it. It's different from how anybody's going to do it, but just do whatever it is that you have to do. Last week, Jude told a great story, and if you weren't here last week, I haven't posted it yet. I will post it. Oh, I am coming to the end. It hasn't been 2 hours. Who said that about me? 2 hours. Anyway, if you weren't here last Sunday, I would urge you to go when I do post it, and I'll post on Facebook that it's live on our website. Jude shared a great story. I think he was in Kenya, where God miraculously healed a deaf and mute girl. It's a phenomenal story, but to me, one of the cool parts of the story is that Jude confessed that he was all confused and frustrated and didn't know what to pray, didn't know how to pray. And his whole point was, Jesus healed the girl because Jesus wants to heal the girl. Had nothing to do with me or how I did it or what I believed or did I have faith or blah, blah, blah. Jesus did what he wanted. When I was in Scotland, I pastored a church the whole time I was in Scotland. I was in a spiritual desert for 8 years that included my entire time in Scotland, the whole 3.5 years. Anybody know what a spiritual desert is? Anybody familiar with that? It's very unfortunate in the Protestant realm we have neglected the teaching of spiritual desert. It's very unfortunate. Great spiritual writers for all of Christianity have referenced this, but Protestants, we've thrown it out. I'm going to give a teaching one Sunday based on the text in Matthew. Jesus, being led by the Spirit, went into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil for 40 days. That is the critical text for the teaching of having a spiritual desert. And I don't want to belabor it because I'm going to teach on it one Sunday. But basically, it's a period of spiritual dryness that has nothing to do with you or what you've done, or you've sinned, or you failed somehow, or you didn't obey somehow. It's a season that God will put some of us through. I think many of you have probably had this happen to you. But see, in our ranks, we're taught that you should never have a spiritual desert. You should never have spiritual dryness. You did something wrong and you can fix it. That's not what a spiritual desert is. So I was in a spiritual desert for 8 years. Some of you have heard me say over and over again, I'll get up on Sundays and thank God for His presence in our midst. And some of you probably wonder, why does He say that every week? I'll tell you why. Because for 8 years, I didn't feel the Holy Spirit in my life like I had for 25 years prior. I didn't have a sense that He was with me. Now, I knew He was with me. I didn't feel like He had deserted me. I didn't feel like He hated me. I didn't feel like I wasn't saved anymore. I knew I was in a spiritual desert, but I didn't feel His presence. So let me tell you something. When I feel and sense His presence, it is sweetness. I don't want to be back in the desert. Now, if He wants me back, I'll go back. But I'm not going to volunteer for that. So I pastored my entire time in a spiritual desert. So I would be teaching, and I would see people moved, weeping, or full of joy by my teaching. And I would sit there and think, well, thank you, Lord, that You're speaking through me, because I sure don't feel anything. But I'll do what You want me to do. I'll be obedient. I'll keep pastoring this church, and I'll keep speaking on Sundays and Sunday morning, Sunday night, because, I knew God was moving, and I was thankful that He was using me, but boy, it didn't feel very good. One Sunday morning before service, this is my last, I'm about done. We're about to get ready to start our Sunday morning service, and the front door busts open, and a woman comes running in frantic, and she's holding a little baby. And the little baby's looking like just not looking good. And she, where's the pastor? Where's the pastor? And they all point her to me, and she comes up to me, and she says, oh, my baby's not doing well. I'm afraid she might be dying. I'm on the way to the hospital. Our church was 2 blocks from the hospital, and she only lived a couple blocks from the church, so she had her little baby carriage, her pram, as they call it in Scotland. And she was walking quickly to the hospital, but she saw the church and came in, and by this time she's in front of me. The retired man who had pastored the church before me, Bill Lilburn, a wonderful man, had asked the Assemblies of God, please send someone to help me. I'm too tired, I'm too old, I need help. And so they sent me there, and he and I became really good friends. A great man. So he had walked up next to me because he was keenly interested. And I, look, part of me wanted to say, get this baby to the hospital. It's only 2 more blocks. But what did I do? I prayed. I laid hands, and when I put my hand on that little baby, she was hot. Hotter than I could ever imagine a human being could be. And her eyes were rolled back, and her mouth was gaped open. And I just said, Jesus, please touch this baby. Please heal this baby. I'm asking you to do it. And Bill was with me. He put his hand on the baby. And I did a quick prayer and said, get this child to the hospital. And so she ran out the door. We went on with our service. After the service was over, we're all sitting around doing what we normally do, talking, and the door pops open and the woman comes in and the little baby's like what you'd expect a little child to be, smiling and bright eyes, and the woman's again crying, but she's filled with joy, and she comes in and says, I just want you to know that before I got to the hospital, she just suddenly recovered. I went ahead and took her. I wanted the doctors to see her, but they said nothing was wrong with her. And we were all thankful, and I was thankful. I'm in a spiritual desert, so I don't, and if you don't understand this, I understand that you don't understand this, because I didn't understand this, but I felt nothing. I was happy for the woman, but I didn't have that surge that some of us are used to when we feel the Holy Spirit in our life. And she left, and we never saw her again. She never came to church again. And Bill Lilburn, the man pastoring with me, came to me, had this little wry grin on his face, and he said, well, and I wish I could do the Scottish accent, but it's been too many years and I can't. I used to could do it. And he said, well, brother, you really had the prayer of faith this morning. And I said, Bill, I did not. How do you know it wasn't your faith? I had no faith. I did what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to pray for people to be healed, and that's what I did. I don't feel it. I didn't feel anything. Thank God that He doesn't need me or my feelings or anything other than, for some reason, He says, heal the sick, raise the dead, cast out demons, share the gospel. And that's what I try to do. And that's what we need to try to do. How we do it is up to us. Or it's how God uses us. I'm going to pray, and then I want some of you to share. What are you hearing? What are you hearing this morning? What do you think? And what is God saying to you? Because every one of you who shares, there will be 2 or 3 other people that God will touch and speak to. Let's pray. Jesus, it is daunting to hear you tell us to do these things. Sometimes it's daunting. And we need your help. We need your help to just do what we're supposed to do. Help us. Speak through the saints. Speak through the saints. In Jesus' name I ask it. Amen. Somebody lead us. What did you hear? What does it mean for you? What do you think? We haven't been doing this a lot, but this is what we do.
Can I be first?
Well, you sure may.
We had an episode right before church started in the fellowship hall. We had an episode right before church started in the fellowship hall. I heard them call my name, and I went back in there, and Diane wanted me to come in there, and she was asking me, did I know this family? And I said, yeah, but not really well. And she told me that they had found a grandson this morning comatose. They think he's had a drug overdose. He's at Jackson's with no brains.
Oh.
And she said, let's pray. And so Jeff and Diane and I joined hands and prayed. And, as I was praying, when there's no brain waves, it's hard to have faith that there's going to be anything. But, I trusted God, and it wasn't my faith. It wasn't my faith. I was just trusting God that He would know what to do, that I didn't know how to pray, that I just gave it to Him and asked Him to be with that family and be with that young man, that he needed a chance to know Jesus. And that's the way I prayed, and what you said helps me understand, and it just was good. It all kind of went together, but that's just what we did, what you said this morning.
Somebody else. What did you hear? What does it mean? How does it work itself out?
I really liked what you were sharing about the people that didn't tell you about God because, they thought, oh, he'll never become a Christian. Because I kind of had the same situation in high school. I mean, she knew I was a Christian. I tried to get her to go to church with me a couple times, but she was one of those people that was, unlike you, she was actually opposed to Christians, and she would attack Christians and make fun of them, everything that she could. But, so we were all like, everybody who was in my friend group who was a Christian, we're like, oh, well, she's not ever going to be a Christian. And then, you add her on Facebook a couple years later, everything is Bible verses, and she's like, yeah, this guy talked to me about Jesus, and I became a Christian. And, so don't ever give up on people just because of that.
Anybody else?
I've been praying for my husband for a lot of years now, and I'm not giving up. I keep right on praying, and I keep on believing that God is going to save him. Because he's been saved before. He knows what it's like to be saved. And I believe that God will save him.
I just think what I'm hearing is just.
Speak a little louder, please.
I think sometimes we need to get over our own selves and realize that it's not about us. It's about us being faithful to God and doing what He's told us to do, no matter what. So if it means praying with someone, if it means sharing your faith with someone, then we just have to do what we're called to do. I know in Chi Alpha we had a soccer tournament yesterday, and there was a girl who was playing, and she rolled her ankle, her right one, and one of the things we did before we took her to go get things checked out is we prayed for her. I think we just have to be, wherever we are, whoever we're with, we just have to be faithful to do what God tells us to do, no matter what.
Same girl he's talking about, me and Liz took her to the emergency room after she hurt her ankle, and we were able to spend time with her and just talk to her about America and about our faith, because she comes from a Muslim background. And we asked her if we could pray for her ankle again, and she said, if it helps, yeah. So we were able to pray for her, and he was feeling a lot better by the time we left. I haven't heard anything else about it, but I'm praying that God will use that to open her up to the idea of Christianity and stuff like that.
I think that story just reminded me of one that's a little bit off our topic, but just with the Muslim faith, how God works in that so many times of showing His miraculous abilities in that. I was reminded of a girl that shared in our class who she went up to, what city is it? Where up north, where it's all Muslims, Dearborn. She went up there to do ministry with them, and one girl came up to her. She was just teaching her English every week, and said, "Man, my baby's been keeping me up. Can you pray for me?" And she did. And the next day she came in. She's like, "I don't know what happened, but your God kept my baby quiet the entire night, slept the entire night, and it's the first time I've slept in weeks."
Wow.
So, God likes to work through those things.
That's good. All right. I think the meta message is do your job. Do what you're supposed to do. We get seized with fear, and then we don't do what we're supposed to do. Every single pass I threw as a quarterback did not get caught. Some of them were really bad passes, and some of them just got dropped. We can't judge effectiveness on results. What we can do is do our job. Do what we know we're supposed to do. And that means facing our fear sometimes and doing what we need to do.
we're supposed to do, then God will take care of it.
That is a fact. That is a fact. Well, let's pray and we'll close. And then they're getting us ready for lunch. I hope you guys will stay. We're going to eat lunch. Then we're going to have ping pong and beanbag toss and bingo in the fellowship hall after we clear the fellowship hall out. But it's, we just encourage you guys to hang out. Hang out as long as you want. Obviously, if you leave, we will not disparage you. If you need to leave, if you don't want to sit around. But we would love to have some time to just have some fun and fellowship. And maybe some of the young men can help me stack these chairs against the wall, because we're going to, do the ping pong and beanbag in here. Okay? So let's stand, I'll pray, and we'll be done. Lord, I never get tired of thanking you for your presence, your tangible presence that we can sense and feel. I thank you for that. Lord, I would want to be faithful to you if I never felt that again. But it sure is nice to sense your presence in my life. Thank you. Help us to live for you. Help us to do what you've asked us to do. Bless the food. Bless our fellowship. In Jesus' name, amen. So the food's been blessed. So when they're ready, do it.